Good day, people. This is Catalin Rata, your host and facilitator into The Aftermath, a podcast where we uncover patterns and reverse engineer the future so you can spot opportunities and threats before everyone else does. Here we are at the final episode of Prices in the AI Era series. We obviously have Manu Martonca with us. He is the founder of SoftFight and architect of the Just Value framework. Welcome back, Manu. Ready for the final one?
Hi, Catalin. As I was telling you before we went on live, ready for another fight if you want.
So am I. So let's close on this one, and we'll sure reconnect in the future as well. Looking back over the 4 episodes, we've simulated what happens when AI pricing becomes standard, and 4 clear patterns have emerged. AI amplifies whatever you bring to it, good or bad. Discovery becomes your competitive advantage. Customers decide based on total cost, not your price. And specialists win while generalists get pushed to commodity. But here's what matters most. Everyone wants to predict which AI tools will win, which pricing models will dominate, which competitors will emerge. Nobody wants to do the harder work of preparing for multiple futures. Yet, in every scenario we've simulated, the companies thriving in year 3 aren't the ones who predicted perfectly. They're the ones who prepared intelligently. Today's question is, what if preparation beats prediction? Let's close the loop on what we should actually do. Manu, we've covered for 4 episodes now. Looking back at what we've discussed so far, what are the key patterns you see emerging?
I'm just stuck on the prediction word because I think it's so neatly tied and closely tied to AI, obviously, since we're talking about machine learning, and that's a probabilistic engine where prediction is everything it does. And that's the promise of AI. Yeah, that's something that in the past used to be very difficult, and something where you would need huge amounts of data, huge amounts of processing power, very highly specialized skills to do anything with AI. And for pricing, that's been true for, I think there are companies doing AI pricing for 20 years already.
Mhm.
Even more, 25, if we think about Amazon and dynamic pricing and e-commerce. But now it's democratized, and anyone can do it. Anyone can buy a Mac Mini, use an open source model, and just let it run nonstop to do predictions. Yeah? And the more data you feed into that, the better the outcomes and the more it helps you. The quantity of data is not the problem. Yeah. The structure of the data is the problem. And whatever models we use, and regardless of who wins the models race and who wins the infrastructure race, and whatever combination of models and infrastructure we're going to use, I think for pricing in IT services, that's not an issue at all. We do not have so much data. We don't need answers in milliseconds, which means that the actual performance of the models and the infrastructure is almost irrelevant. We already have everything we need. We don't need better models, and we don't need faster infrastructure and more compute to make the optimal pricing decisions for IT services. We already have the capabilities that we need. We just need to make sure that this capability and technology is diffused and is used by anyone who might benefit from it. And obviously, that's not true for many other domains. Yeah? If we want AI processing on device, and we expect our iPhones and wearables to use AI and to not to be able to have those functionalities without internet connection, then yes, we need faster models, smaller models, better chips to process it. But for IT services, we don't have that problem. If we don't see any advancement from NVIDIA, from OpenAI, from anyone in the AI space from this day onwards, we already have all the technology we need to make, I would say, almost perfect pricing decisions. Almost, because we will only get there if we have an all-powerful, almighty AI that knows everything in the world in real time. That's when you can make perfect pricing decisions. Yeah, I always compare the pricing process to climate forecasting, not weather forecasting, climate forecasting. So if you really want to be able to predict what will happen in 3 months, you need climate data from the whole world. I think now the closest we are is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square in the atmosphere, where they have sensors and they can gather data to make predictions. We would need that level of sensitivity and specificity to make pricing decisions. You need to know all the industries, all the interest rates, all the stock market movements, all the costs, salaries, taxes, everything in the world to be able to make perfect pricing decisions. But we don't need that. We're so far behind in terms of the optimization of pricing for IT services that any advancement we make towards that absolute perfect price that we will never reach will be a major advancement. And we already have the infrastructure to do that. We already have the models that are capable enough to do that. And that's why preparation, gathering data, analyzing it, standardizing it, structuring it, exposing it back to the teams that have to do the negotiation internally, to the clients. Whether if we talk about machine-to-machine negotiation, that preparation is much more important than the prediction engines.
I got a little bit stuck on the prediction word also, and inevitably some words of wisdom came to my mind that say the best way to predict the future is to create it, right? So
for me, it's the other quote that came to my mind when you started talking about it. And it's the one attributed to either Niels Bohr or Yogi Berra, depending on who you ask, which says it's very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future.
Fair point. Fair point. I also feel like all these patterns that we've talked about so far, they do connect to something deeper, don't they? I feel that under these patterns, there's strategies and actions. So can you talk a little bit about those strategies and actions that will trigger the patterns eventually?
It's fairly simple. Specialization. That's the first decision you need to make. It's a strategy decision. Who are your clients? What problems do they have? How you're helping them solve those problems with technology? How do you charge for it? This is strategy 101. If you can't answer these 4 questions in writing with 1-2 sentences each of them, and then you do this with the entire management team and leadership team and board members and get aligned answers. If you get misalignment here, then anything else you do afterwards will be a mess. Once you answer these questions, then you go into the details. Okay, what does pricing models mean? Do we have different business units that work with different types of customers, and we have create a separate strategy for each of them? You work on the sales process. You map out, okay, where do we have people involved? Where do we let the agents do the work because it's faster, more scalable, it's more standardized? What are the guardrails that we put in place? All these can be done today, need to be done today. And it's some of these decisions need to be followed through for years. Now, you cannot change your customer segmentation and the audience you're looking for and the types of companies you work with every year. For some companies, you need to have at least 5 years of a runway where you decide today, and then for 5 years you work on it and you develop the brand image, the positioning, the networks, the sales channels to be able to fully capitalize on that. You make these decisions, then you go into the actual technical details of the pricing process. Yeah, competition research, cost models, different types of pricing models that you apply, rate cards eventually, not necessarily hourly based, hopefully.
Mm.
And then you go into actual proposals, price calculations, contracts, negotiations, and so on. So the steps are the same as they've always been. The advantage now is that we have AI that we can use at different steps and in different contexts that will help us a lot to have a better outcome or to have the same outcome faster or to have the same outcome faster and reliably because you don't depend on the people in the team. And even if you lose a team member or they leave or you bring someone else new or you grow and you have more team members, you will be able to rely on the same level of conversion win rate for sales processes or this the calculations for the prices will be the same. Yeah. One of the problems today is that you give the same project to different teams and you get back different prices. And so I've seen companies, large companies, where they've used this as an internal competition mechanism. Yeah, where they would create, they would let different business units or in different geographies, or sometimes in the same country but in different cities, they would let them do internal bidding on a client project. And then most of the time, the one with the lowest price, with the lowest cost base, won it. Yeah. Okay, that could work. But the bigger question is, why do you get different prices from different teams, even though they have the same cost base? And that's something that is now a big problem for most IT software companies, because that means you cannot rely on your pricing process. If you get different people calculate different prices with the same inputs, then you have a big problem. And this is where AI can help a lot because you can standardize and you can make sure that, yes, some of the steps will be probabilistic, but you can put in place a structure and deterministic steps so that when it comes to the actual price calculation and the numbers that you calculate, if you have the same inputs, you should have the same price calculated.
Okay. So the essential recipe is back to basics, get it right, then amplify it,
Yes.
basically. Let's see what this means in practice. We'll go into scenario building. I'd like you to imagine two companies in 2025 hearing the same predictions, right, about AI pricing. Maybe they've been listening to this podcast as well. Company A says, let's wait and see what happens. Company B says, let's prepare for multiple scenarios. Fast forward 3 years later, what's different about these two companies?
The waiting company is generalist, commoditized, will only be able to sell with very low prices, will not be, I expect them not even to be able to make any profits, because anyone that uses AI right will be able to sell faster, negotiate better, and deliver higher quality in a way that makes them so competitive that you can only undercharge them if you lower your prices so much that you actually work below cost.
Mm.
No. There's no other way to compete with that. And it's for many crises that we've had over the years, either on a macro level or specific to the IT industry. And for many moments where companies, managers felt like there was pressure, I don't know, let's take one simple example in the pandemic. Yeah. The main challenge for services companies in the pandemic was hiring enough employees to be able to deliver the projects that they were selling and signing. Yeah. Everybody was scrambling to recruit enough people, hiring hiring graduates from reconversion schools, people that did not have engineering backgrounds. They just did a quick course, a few months, maybe sometimes weeks, and they would hire them and build them to the clients. And that was the main challenge. Yeah. To solve that problem, it was not. It was the type of problem that you can solve by cutting corners. There's no structural dimensional effect where you say, if you don't do this, it will be wrong. Yeah, everybody was doing it in a different way. Some were using recruitment agencies to move faster. Others were working with subcontractors. They didn't have time to hire the people. They didn't want to take the risk, but they would use subcontractors and outsource the work, different combinations. So everybody scrambled and solved it in a different way to different levels of quality and success. When we talk about this transformation, that's not true anymore. We cannot expect, and I don't expect, to look at this 3 years from now, or 4 years, or 5 years from now, and say, yeah, I remember the time when AI seemed like it would change everything, and then it just proved that everyone did their thing, and now we're back to the situation where headcount is the main KPI for growth, and people are still selling hours, and you have lots of juniors in some teams, and then you can sell them as a blended rate, and everybody's. I just cannot imagine any possibility for that to happen, which means that everything will change drastically. Nobody can really know all the dimensions and layers and factors that will play a big part in this. But for sure, the pressure to be more efficient while selling time is going to be a big part of it. We cannot escape this. And that's why anyone that now, to go back to the two examples, anyone that does not make the transformation now, they might be able to sustain what they did so far for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. But it's a downward slope. Yeah. It will be very difficult to grow. It will be very difficult just to sustain the current level. Yeah. And we will have, as with every wave like this, we will have new companies, we will have new vendors that are created which don't have any legacy structure. They don't have any, this is how we've always done it, so we will continue. Yeah? So they will adapt much faster. They will apply new pricing models, billing models. They will sell different types of services. They will measure their success differently. All this will happen at an accelerated pace exactly because AI allows lots of people who don't have all the skills they need to compensate and be able to move much faster to provide, to solve problems with technology. Yeah, that's the simplest way we can put it.
That sounds like a confident prediction. And I wanted to clarify if you think that going through this transformation, would that create capabilities for even more uncertain futures?
I don't think it's a prediction. I think it's an invitation. Anyone listening and any manager in a IT services companies can do this simple exercise. Yeah. Just take the foundations of the business. What we have measured so far: number of employees, billability rate, average rate. Just take these numbers, put them in an Excel file, and project 3 years into the future. Yeah? And just make some simple assumptions. Okay, how many projects we had so far? What is the pipeline? How many projects do we expect to get in the next 3 months, and then in 6 months, and year, and 2 years, and so on? And just see how this plays out with the current numbers in the pipeline. Yeah. And if you don't see any force, any external force that can come and save you, if the numbers don't look good, and you don't see any external force that can come and save you, then definitely you need to do something. And that's why I don't think it's a prediction in the sense that nobody can say for each individual company or for groups of companies what these numbers will look like in 3 years. But each individual person can look at this future and try to build a story in words, not in numbers, to say, if we do this and this, I expect that to happen. And if we do this, we'll manage to get there. And if we get there, we will be successful. This is why I don't want to call it a prediction. And I've done this exercise for myself. I've done it with other teams and organizations. And it's exactly because of all these uncertain futures that you talked about, that's even more of a reason to do it. When we had a predictable economy and the rules of the rules-based order, world order, were accepted by everyone, and we didn't have any reason to believe that they will change soon, it was very easy to make, or people were confident in making forecasts for 3-5 years, business plans, because they didn't expect many things to change. And it was easy to just put a growth rate and expect that what worked in the past will continue to work. I don't expect to see many people now that believe in the same context. I think we all have to accept that it's a big transformation. All the moving parts are moving faster in different directions. There are lots of good solutions where you have different combinations of different moving parts and you put them together in a new way, in a new puzzle, and that will take you forward. I'm seeing this with many companies right now that are still growing, that are very successful, and they have a very good story that they tell themselves, and they are very confident in the future.
We promised we're going to close the loop, so I want to give you the opportunity to go a little bit through how does the just value framework specifically enable this kind of preparation? What makes it a foundation that AI can amplify?
It's what you said earlier about the basics. Those are the basic practices that anyone needs to have the right foundation. And it's the typical positive feedback loop and the typical compounding effect where if you do enough things well on a consistent basis for a long enough time, it's impossible not to have good results. And none of the individual practices will change the world. And it's possible to do 3 of the 8 practices in 1 year and not see big results. But if you do enough of the practices consistently for enough time, long enough time, it's guaranteed to bring good results. And that's, in the end, what first principles are about and what the scientific method is about. Is, okay, you don't know when you start, you don't know exactly where you will get. You have a direction, you have some milestones in mind, you have a general objective in mind, but you have no guarantee that you'll get there. If you paralyze and don't do anything because you don't have all the answers, then you'll not do anything. You have to start, and I think in this context, practices and habits and a general direction are much more useful than recipes.
I think we've gathered enough context to answer our primary question of the episode. What if preparation beats prediction? Does it?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. The almost optimal pricing calculation for a project in IT services has hundreds of variables that you need to consider, to take into account to make that price calculation. That's preparation and only preparation. At every step, whether it's researching the industry that you want to target before making the strategic decision to target the one industry or the other. Once you communicate to customers in that industry and you do your content sales, marketing outreach, that's also a lot of preparation, because the way you communicate will attract some types of clients and it will not attract other types of clients. Once you go into a proper conversation with a potential buyer, that preparation is critical. Once you go into the details of the project and the technical solution and the questions you have and all the discussions around the solution, that's also preparation. At every step, you can go back and reduce it to preparation.
Can we give listeners a comprehensive early warning system, like across all 5 episodes? What should they be watching for so they can be ahead of the game?
Confidence. I would say that the easiest test that you can do, and I've started doing this with some of the teams I'm working with, is okay, we work on something and we make a decision or we prepare a document or we work on a process. And then I just ask them, okay, what is your confidence level right now that this will work? And if you never get above 50%, or if most of the answers are below 50%, then you have a big problem. If you consistently get answers into the 70, 80% range, that's more than good enough with engineers and delivery-minded people, because they are never satisfied. They are always worried about what could go wrong. They always think about the items or the aspects that were not taken into account. But that's more than enough to build on and to move on. And that's, again, that applies to engineering, to delivery, to sales, to contract negotiation, to pricing calculations, and so on. Yeah. So that's one easy way, I think, for anyone and everyone and anywhere to test where we are. Yeah. And you can do it with the sales manager when they do the forecast for the year. You can do it with the delivery manager when they prepare a proposal and they have to send it to the customer. You can do this at every level, and it obviously ties into the prediction and probabilistic nature of AI, and that's the whole point in the end. And if we would have, I don't want to say AGI, but a powerful AI that can run an IT company and you don't need people anymore, that's what it would do, right? At every step, it would calculate confidence levels and then decide to move on or to go to another scenario.
That sounds like a diagnostic tool that can be developed and used. How would that trigger further action?
If you break it into steps, then at every level you can put rules that are manageable. And you can think of scenarios. And it doesn't need to be deterministic rules. You don't have to think of all the options from the beginning, because then you paralyze and you don't do it. But that's the big advantage of AI now, is that you can create this structured isolated steps where you move from one to the other and you build towards building this complete but also specific knowledge about the project, where you take into account all these variables and you are able to calculate the price and the confidence level to present that price to the client.
Cool. Thank you for sharing those frameworks and tools. I think my biggest takeaway is that AI amplifies what you already do. So it's a time you look under the hood. That's the pattern. And it's simultaneously both an opportunity and a threat. Obviously. If your foundations are strong, obviously it's an opportunity. If they are not, if they're weak, it's a major threat. Thank you, Manu, for being part of all these episodes so far. We've learned about the foundations, about clear pricing philosophy, discovery discipline, customer outcome focus, strategic positioning as well, human in the loop architecture. We've clearly seen that is not only about AI. And these aren't AI strategies, right? These are business fundamentals that we should consider and realize that AI will amplify. So get them right. AI accelerates your advantage. Get them wrong. AI probably accelerates your decline. Are there any final words or conclusion that you want to share with the listeners?
I want to be positive and optimist, as I usually am, in saying that however difficult it might be, or however difficult it might seem right now, because it's unknown, because it's multiple unknown futures, we know for a fact that in the entire of human history of at least 10,000 years since we have records and we know about the different civilizations going up and down and growing and then disappearing. On a much smaller scale, obviously, it's the same here. So we'll have companies growing, getting much bigger, reaching scales that they couldn't even maybe imagine a few years ago. And we will have companies and organizations that don't survive. And it's a choice in which group we want to be. And I feel like most managers in IT services underestimate severely the pricing power they have and the control they could have over this process and over this problem. And it's most of the time it's just a matter of putting in the effort and taking the time to work on this. That has been my experience in the past 15 years in the industry, is that most people feel like they are price takers, like they have to accept what the market decides, be it good or bad, and they enjoy the rides when it goes up, and then they have to accept that it comes down and they can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where in fact, many of us can be price makers, where we decide the strategies, we take control over the process, and at the end, we get the results we're looking for.
Manu, thank you for being a part of the aftermath. We've simulated what happens when AI sets all prices, when only AI talks to customers, what AI can see, whether journalists can survive, and why preparation beats prediction. Thank you for helping us see all these patterns before they become everyone's lived experience. It's been an absolute privilege to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catalin, for the invitation. And I'm just thinking right now that I will be very curious to listen to this in 3 years' time and see what happened.
Very good point. To everyone who's been with us through all 5 episodes, you now see the aftermath before it arrives. You know that AI amplifies your foundation. You know that discovery becomes the competitive advantage, that customers decide on total cost, not price, and you know that specialists will. And obviously, you know that preparation beats prediction, so I can't stress on that enough. The question now remains for you to answer. What are you going to do with all these patterns? Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you again soon. Until next time, keep building your future. This is Catalin Rata, and we'll see you in the aftermath.